Come on in. Welcome back, happy fabricators. So you guys asked for it. We are going to give you a small shop tour or shed tour or workshop wherever you are from in the world and whatever you call it. Now, if you haven't seen any of my videos already, my name is Alex Jordan and I do fabrication repair videos and how-to welding videos. It is kind of messy in here, but that is life. Sometimes the shop is cleaner, but most of the time it's messier than this. So we're just gonna show you what I got and how we work around it and how we make it work. This is a very small space. It is a 14 by 21 foot building, so we're under 300 square feet. I think it's right around, I'd have to do the math, but it's a little over 290 square feet. So this space has kind of evolved over time. Things have changed. I've got different tools, got rid of other tools to try to make it the most usable I can for what I have to work with. So we're basically just gonna pivot around the shop here, show you what we got going on. So right here, I've got a Smithy 3-in-1 mill drill. This is my lathe, and then it also has a kind of modular milling head on it. So you can either use it as a lathe itself, or you can pull the tooling off and fixture a vise down to the bed and use it as a milling machine or just a regular drill press. You can lock it out, run it down. The head kind of moves up and down, so it's definitely got its quirks. A couple things I don't necessarily care about it is just a potentiometer that controls the speed, so there's not actually a gear drive in there. It's belt driven, so it doesn't have a lot of torque. So if you're doing large stuff at slow speeds, it doesn't like it. But if you're running high speeds and running a carbide on there, it works great. This is one of those tools that, one of the things I frequently have people say in the comments is, well, I could do that if I could afford those tools and stuff. And this is one of those things. The example is I actually had no money out of pocket on this job. I just used my skill set and traded labor for this piece of equipment. There was a gentleman that was building a big old truck, mud truck, and I traded about 30 hours of welding and some cutting on my plasma table for it. So we traded straight across for that machine. So that's just a good reminder to keep an eye out there. Don't be afraid to ask for trades, because not all the time do you have to pay top dollar for something. Sometimes you can trade your resources for someone else's resources. So when you come around here, I've kind of got some cluttered storage up here. This is a lot of my painting stuff, and I know I'm going to get kind of flack for that, having paint and semi-flammable things over top of the plasma table, but oh well. And then as we move over here, I've got kind of hardware organizers and stuff. I try to keep things kind of separated, easy to get to. That's one thing I have found over the years, is if you can just keep a small assortment of the regular hardware that you use, you save so much time in trips to the hardware store and even money, because a lot of times if you can order ahead and get something in a little bit of bulk, you figure out those common sizes that you use and get those similar sizes in bulk, it's going to cost you a lot less time than if you have to just run down to the local hardware store and buy one or two things in a rush. Right down here we have our Langmuir Systems Crossfire Pro. Now I've been running the Langmuir table for almost 2 years, not necessarily this one. I started off with their standard OG table and then I migrated up to the Pro. This machine was definitely a game changer for me when it comes to fabrication, for especially repeatability and for volume. I don't use it for every job. Sometimes it's faster just to cut it out by hand and go to the drill press. But if you're making more than two of them, or you think you're ever gonna make another one, it's definitely been worth it to draw it out, cut it out, because then it's repeatable. And if you think the customer is going to want another one, or you're going to want another one, all you got to do is throw that sheet back on the table and pull your file up and push go to cut another one out. So these things are actually more affordable than you would think. Their OG table, which is a little over 2 by 2 foot cutting bed, I think the kit now, which is cheaper than when I got it, is right around the $1,600 mark if you have a plasma cutter already. And once I got fiddling around, figured out how it worked, and was doing consistent jobs on the weekend, it only took about 6 months for it to completely pay itself off. And after that, it's paid itself off multiple times over. So I've got this thing hooked up to a Prime Weld Cut 60. I originally had the razor weld that comes with the package on this thing, and I had multiple mechanical issues. I have been using some of Prime Weld's equipment lately and have been very impressed with the performance for the price point that this machine comes in. In a perfect world, I'd love to get a Hypertherm, but Hypertherm costs more than the table itself, so in my mind that's not necessarily realistic at this point in time. Got to stick with the budget. The next thing we got here is a little work table that I made years ago, and it's got wheels on it so I could roll around and stuff, and my 15-inch Evolution steel chop saw. This thing has been another game changer for me. and be able to cut stuff faster and truer. I used to do a lot of cutting with a grinder and a portaband. Both those things are pretty slow and not necessarily as accurate. This thing has a good cast aluminum base, comes with a nice V-block, so if you're cutting round tube or if you want to do a compound miter on some square stuff. It's got a couple of quick set detents, so you can go at 15 degrees, 30 degrees, or 45. Lock those down into the space, tighten it down, and cut away. This thing will cut almost anything. I'm not sponsored by them. I paid full price for this piece of equipment, and it's definitely a game-changing piece of equipment. This machine runs right around $500. If you can't afford getting this model specifically, they have another model that is just over $200. The primary difference is it's not quite as heavy duty of a clamp system and base. Moving along here, we have a cute little 2x48 inch belt sander here. I picked this thing up not too long ago actually, and it kind of needs to be gone through and refurbished. It's mounted on a wheel here, and it's been really nice to have in the shop just to clean up little plasma cut parts and stuff, run on the bandsaw, but it definitely needs some work. This might be a future video project. We might maybe revamp it, clean it up, paint it. It needs a platen, so that might be a future video. Okay, so moving along here on the next wall, we've got my steel materials rack. I've got it up hanging high on the wall. There's 3 different racks here. It's not a lot of space, but I don't keep a lot of stock for a couple reasons, because I don't have space, and also to keep stock on hand gets expensive also. I tend to just get it based off the amount that I need for the job or the project at hand. As you can see here, it goes the length of the building, so I can get full 20-foot strips in here. As you remember from the beginning, this building is 21 feet long, so I can still technically store 20-foot long full-length sticks in here. My current project is in the way, but you can kind of see that rack goes the full length of the building there. And it's high enough that I still got floor space. This is my current project. It's a new garage door for the main garage door over there, and that's going to be a future video as well, building this thing out. Going to make multi-panels, kind of a quad folding door, so hopefully that'll be a good video for you guys. Going to try to kind of make it unique. Okay, so in the middle of the shop here we got my TIG welder, and I've been running the PrimeWeld TIG 225 for the last couple of years. I had an old Syncrowave Miller 250, which are very good welders, but it was just too much of a beast for this little shop. It took up 4 times the space of this machine and was loud and actually had less features than this because it was an older style Syncrowave. So this thing has been a great machine. I love the price point that it comes in. It's a great value for the price. I wouldn't say it is the absolute best welder out there, but it is definitely the absolute best welder out there for under $1,000 currently that I know of. It comes with good hardware and just has great performance. I'm also running their CoolMax 3000 on it, so it's got water cooled. I got a water cooled torch on it, and then I've got it set up on this little welding cart here that I started building and kind of repurposed another cart and started bending some side rails for it and stuff. And then, as you know, life and jobs happen, and sometimes things don't get finished right away. So this thing's kind of tacked together and it's been getting pushed around the shop. I really needed to finish it and paint it out and build it the way I want to. Okay, moving on over here, we have my current fabrication table. Now this is a Certiflat Fab Cube. It is their 2x4 foot Fab Cube. This was kind of a pricey table for a hobbyist small shop. I don't necessarily recommend just going out and buying one of these if you're getting started. I definitely don't regret getting it. It is a very good quality table, but there are other sources out there if you're just getting started that are not quite as pricey. I think just the top on this without the wheels and everything was upwards of $800 or $900. This is one of those tables that comes flat on a pallet, so you have to weld it together yourself. Cool thing about it is a modular setup, so if you want to add on to it down the road and stuff, you can. You can bolt wings onto it and add different accessories to it. So I've got this thing on wheels. I can roll it around anywhere in the shop to get it out of the way or so that it can be used in the best way possible. I hang my grinders off of it. I usually have a couple grinders set up, flapper discs, cut-off wheels. I really like these zip stripping discs, but I like to have a couple grinders so you don't have to switch back and forth as much on your cutting discs or grinding discs. Got my torch set up here. I've got number 20 water-cooled torch with some Hourglass Ingenuity magnets. I really like these things. It allows you to kind of like move around, be modular with whatever you're working on, but it still keeps those leads up off the ground and clean. And I've got my Hourglass Ingenuity torch holder here as well. These guys are definitely not necessary. I really appreciate just the quality in this little guy. And the other thing I love about this thing is the fact that it's modular and you can magnet it to anything. So whenever I have a mobile job, I take this thing with me, and it's not super necessary for when you're running standard cups and stuff, but if you're doing stainless work and you've got a FUPA cup or a BBW or a microfluoric cup, something like that, some of those cups can be upwards of $40, $60, and if you drop it, you're out that. So that's kind of how I justified this, is I can bring this on a mobile job, I can stick it to anything, and I've got a safe place to stick that torch if I'm underneath a customer's car tacking up a stainless exhaust or something like that. It's really nice to be able to just have a safe place to stick your torch wherever you're at. So underneath my fab table here, I've got my Prime Weld MiG 180, and then I've got a gas bottle that's mounted up on the table here on a little side bracket so that it kind of rolls around with the table. I don't have to worry about dragging that. This has been a great little machine. I've put this thing through its paces. I originally had a little Lincoln, I think it was an SP 140, and the thing just wasn't doing the job. It was a little 110 welder and just didn't care for it. And I upgraded to this Prime Weld MiG 180, and this has been an awesome machine. It's a dual voltage machine, so if I take it on a mobile job and only have 110 power, I can still weld pretty reliably up to 3/16 and sometimes 1/4 inch, depending on what breaker that 120 outlet is. But then this thing will also run off 220 if you need to do some heavier duty work. It also comes with a stick lead. Not many MIG welders have a stick function, so that's kind of cool. And then it also comes with a aluminum spool gun, all in the one package under one price. Moving along here, we have my material storage rack. Now, so far this has worked out very well. I've got my sheet steel here for running on the plasma cutter. I like to order it in 4x8s, and then I cut it down to 4x4s because it's just a lot easier to manage in this small space. Downside to it is I got to pack it across the shop, which is a whole whopping 20 feet, but it's not as workflowy as I would like. In an ideal world, I'd like to have this right beside the plasma cutter, but maybe down the road we can figure out a situation where that works. But this is the room that I had for material, so this is what I made work. So I've just got kind of some buckets here at an angle in this thing. It's kind of covered up with some stuff. So I've got round stock, square stock, and just some sheet metal stuff down here. And then I've got a space back here that fits the kind of like 2 to 6 foot tall length range of material. And I can stand stuff up back here for stuff that's too short to go up on the long rack up on the wall. And then I've got rod storage here. I've just got an assortment of open used rods and then kind of unorganized tubes of other rods here that are covered up. I know it's not necessarily the best practice to keep all that stuff out in the open, but you do what you got to do. Up in the corner here, we got some rolls of fiberglass. I used to do a lot more composite work and stuff like that, and I still do some here and there. Fiberglass is a lot cheaper to buy by the roll, so I had a couple rolls of both chop mats and woven mats for those projects that I do, and we'll do some projects down the road. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see some how-to fiberglass and composite stuff. I'm pretty well versed in building hard molds out of fiberglass and stuff like that. I do that for my 9 to 5 quite a bit, along with the fabrication stuff. Here we've got another Prime Weld TIG 225. Currently I use this one for more of my mobile stuff because the other one is hooked up with the water cooler, so this gives me a lighter package to throw in the vehicle and go do another job. Up on the wall here we've got rattle can, paint stuff. I made this setup for organization and stuff, and it's really nice to see what all I have, but in the grand scheme of things, as I've had it up for a couple of years, I'm probably going to end up taking it down off the wall and just putting it in a tote because I don't use my spray paints every day, and that is a lot of real estate and storage space in a small shop that could be used for something more productive that I do on a daily basis. So that's probably going to change in the near future. And then down here I've got one of my Husky toolboxes. I've liked the Husky, not sponsored in any way, but I just appreciate they are big ball bearing drawers so they can hold quite a bit of weight, and I'm not necessarily brand loyal when it comes to toolboxes. I like a couple things. I like fairly heavy duty, and I like ball bearing drawers. But after it comes to that, I just can't see myself spending thousands of dollars on a snap-on box or anything like that. I know they have their place, but I'm not rolling them around on the daily basis and putting them through that much hurt. So these guys have worked great for me. This has got the stainless top, so I can use it as a workbench, and it's kind of multi-purpose. Eventually I would like to actually get probably another one of these and change the rest of my workbenches into toolboxes just to maximize storage. So moving along over here, we have my mill drill set up. Now this is basically just a glorified drill press. It's an old Harbor Freight milling machine. It's belt driven on top, so if you have to change the speeds, you got to kind of go through the hassle of doing that, so I don't do that very often. But it does have a nice vise on it, and you're able to move the tables around. The ways are extremely worn out on this thing. There's probably about 2/3 of rotation on the crank handles before the table actually starts moving. I'm sure I could take it apart and clean it up and tighten those up, but this just hasn't been priority. But it is nice to have a drill press that you can have a good vise, clamp something in, and move stuff around on. If I have to do any machining, I often actually use the Smithy 3-in-1 over there because things are just a little bit tighter on it. So moving along to this messy corner here, I do have some of my clamp storage on the side of the drill mill here. I've got another toolbox that I use for just like random tabs and cutouts if I cut stuff out and don't necessarily use it. A lot of times you need tabs and stuff like that, so I keep a lot of that stuff. Got a paint mixer, that's come in handy. We've got another toolbox. I keep a lot of my actual like mechanical tools in this box, and then we've got just kind of a cluttered charging station here for batteries and camera batteries, stuff like that. We've got some more hardware up on the wall here with the pegboard. Beside the toolbox, I have my final workbench here. I've just got some more storage underneath and just kind of clutter. We've got drill bits and hammers, stuff like that hanging up on the wall. Shop TV, everybody's got to have a shop TV. And then more toolbox and tool storage. So up here, hanging off the ceiling, I have my Infratech heat lamp, and I really love this thing. This is a heat lamp I got for doing composite stuff because it's really cold out here and I don't have insulation. So this will kind of heat up an area and let my fiberglass dry and stuff better. But I end up using it for multiple other things, including fabrication. I use this thing quite a bit for doing cast aluminum repairs. I'll bring this thing down off the ceiling when I'm not using it as a heater to stand up underneath and keep warm, and I will heat up the cast aluminum parts with it. I can get those cast aluminum parts probably almost up to 300 degrees just by setting them underneath this lamp, and then I don't have to have an oven to stick them in. And then it's more of a multi-purpose unit anyways. So I can leave in the link description for this thing. This is definitely something that I've used the heck out of. Also, along with that, I will try to add links in the description to most of these tools that we've pointed out if I can get them, so that in the event that you want to add those to your portfolio of tools, you can do so. Okay, so moving over here, we kind of have the little island of the shop. I end up tying some of my bottles to it. We've got a hose reel hooked to it up here. I've got some cabling that goes up into the ceiling with a digital scale for weighing things. This is kind of a busy post, believe it or not. There's a post hidden in this menagerie that all this stuff is hung off of. We have a kind of a lower dollar eBay bender. It's a smaller bender. It does, I believe, down from 3/8 all the way up to 1-inch tubing, and I bought this to do a specific job, and it has more than paid for itself on other jobs. It's just a manual bender. I have it kind of mounted in an unconventional way. A lot of people mount them horizontally, but I don't have a lot of space in here, so I decided to mount this thing vertically. I can stick the tubing in there, and then I can actually use my weight, if it is a thicker wall piece of tubing, and just hang off of this thing to wrap it around the mandrel. Moving over here, I have a bike stand. This is something that I salvaged actually from my work. They threw it in the dumpster. It wasn't latching or working, so I tore it apart, dissected it, built the new part that broke inside, and then put it together. It's nice to just have a stand that's kind of universal. I don't know if you notice, in a lot of my videos, I use my flapper disc as kind of in place of a belt sander, and this is where I stick that guy. I mount it right into that arm, and then I could sit there and use it as a mounted sander. I don't use it as much now that I have that little belt sander over in the corner, or I'll use it just to hold things as I'm working on. It's nice to have just a universal clamp to be able to hang on to something when you need to. Down on the floor here, I have my Rogue Fab tubing bender. This thing has not been used as much as I would like to. We've got some future projects coming up that we'll be doing videos on that it'll definitely be used on. It's one of those pieces of equipment that I thought I would use a lot, and I haven't used it as much as I thought I would. I've definitely still used it, but I wouldn't say that it's paid for itself yet. There's some tools that you get that they pay for themselves in the first job, and they're just super convenient. They increase your production, they increase your quality, and this has not necessarily done that for me yet. Not to say that it's a bad piece of equipment whatsoever, just the jobs that I've had so far haven't necessarily lended themselves to this tool specifically. So that's something to take into consideration, especially when you're in a small space, is just to consider how much you're going to use a tool, because real estate in a small space like this is very precious, and if you don't use it enough, it might not be worth it. Okay, so moving further around the post here, I have my Portaband. Now, this has been a setup that I use quite a bit, and I found that this has been the most useful orientation for this tool. I do still use it in a mobile application sometimes, but not very often. Most of the time I just kind of made this quick little wall bracket here, and this thing sits in the vertical position. I've got a clamp on the trigger, and I can just hit the switch and turn that thing on, and it works really good for just cutting small chunks of stuff. Run it in, make a quick little cut, and then I can even get in and do more detailed stuff when it's in this orientation. I've just found for me that this is the best way to use this tool, and it takes up a lot less space hanging on the wall here. It's not in the drawer, so it's easy and accessible to get to. Another thing in the small space is I definitely try to use ceiling space. So as you can see up here, I've also got some sonotubes. I found them to be very helpful for material storage, and I've got some of those screwed into the ceiling boards, and actually some of them are through bolted so that I can put some heavier stuff in them, and I've got some more material storage up here. This is mostly kind of my aluminum and all thread stock, stuff like that. So that's going to pretty much wrap up my small shop tour. If you have any questions about the equipment that I use or the space, feel free to drop those questions down in the comments. I would love to answer to the best of my ability. Like I said before, I will try to leave those links down in the description for any of those tools that I have links for. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting. So thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and go build something, guys. I say so much. I need to have a so counter.